You know how people say family gatherings bring people together? Yeah, well, they never met my family. It was supposed to be one of those picture-perfect Sunday roasts, steaming chicken, potatoes roasted to crispy perfection, too many side dishes for the number of chairs at the table. My aunt was there with her new boyfriend, my cousins were trying to look older than they were, and my mum was playing hostess like her life depended on it. I'd come back home for the weekend. Just for the weekend. I live in London now, working in marketing, trying to hold onto my peace with both hands. I knew coming home was risky. I mean, Mum and I haven't exactly been besties since I turned like 15. But I missed my dad. Missed the smell of my childhood home. So I came. Big mistake. Everything was going fine until it wasn't. We were halfway through dessert, some store-bought apple pie that Mum tried to pass off as homemade, when my cousin Amy made this innocent comment. Just a throwaway line. She said, "I saw your Instagram, you looked hot in that Ibiza post." I laughed because yeah, that trip was wild. Sunsets, cocktails, crop tops that barely did their job. I work hard, I travel, I dress how I want. End of story. But then, Mum put her fork down. Slowly. Like something out of a horror movie. She gave me that tight, judgmental smile she'd been perfecting since 1999 and said, "Well, some of us clearly enjoy advertising themselves. You might as well hang a sign around your neck. Honestly, you dress like a whore." Silence. Like actual silence. Like the Wi-Fi had cut out on the entire house. My aunt froze mid-sip of wine. Amy looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. My little cousin then dropped his fork. And I blinked. Once. Twice. Tried to convince myself I had heard wrong. But I hadn't. She said it. Out loud. In front of everyone. I laughed. But it wasn't funny. It was that sharp, did you just lose your mind kind of laugh. My stomach twisted. My chest burned. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Not yet. "Mum," I said, voice trembling just a little, "what the hell did you just say?" She shrugged. Shrugged. Like she didn't just torch whatever shred of dignity I had left. "I'm just saying, darling. Maybe if you respected yourself more, you wouldn't post photos like that. It's embarrassing. For all of us." That's when Dad stood up. And not in a slow, dramatic way either. No. He slammed his hand on the table so hard the wine glasses jumped. "Enough," he growled. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a knife. Everyone turned to look at him. My mum blinked, surprised. "I'm sick of this," he said, pointing at her with a shaking finger. "You humiliate her again and think you can get away with it? You think just because you're her mother you can treat her like garbage." I swear to God, in that moment my dad looked like someone I didn't even recognize. Like all the times he'd stayed quiet were catching up to him. Like all those years of silent dinners, fake smiles, and biting his tongue had finally broken something in him. "You don't get to shame her because she's confident," he said. "You don't get to call your own daughter a whore in front of the family and think it's okay." The room was still quiet, but now it was buzzing with that dangerous electricity. Like something sacred had just been broken and no one knew how to fix it. Mum looked furious, but also like she didn't know what to do. Like no one had ever talked back to her before. And honestly, maybe they hadn't. "Oh, so now you're going to pretend she's some angel?" Mum snapped. "She puts half-naked pictures online for strangers to like and you want me to clap?" Dad laughed bitterly. "You think respectability is found in a skirt length? She's smart. She's strong. She has a job, her own place, and a backbone. That's more than I can say for most people." That's when it happened. The tears. Mine. Slipping down, hot and quiet. Not because I was ashamed, but because someone finally stood up for me. I don't know what hit me harder, Mum's insult or Dad's defense. But that was the moment the house split in two. One side was chaos. One side was calm. And I was standing right in the middle, trying to decide where I belonged. After that outburst, no one touched their apple pie. My aunt mumbled something about needing to check on the dog, even though she doesn't own one. My cousins quickly gathered their phones and disappeared to the living room like they were avoiding a gas leak. Everyone scattered like they knew what was coming next wasn't meant for public viewing. Me? I stood there, still stuck in that seat like my body didn't get the memo to move. Mum was still at the head of the table, arms crossed, lips pursed, eyes darting like she was calculating how to spin this. My dad, God bless that man, was breathing hard, jaw clenched, like every word he'd just said cost him a chunk of his soul. And me? I felt hollow. Like someone had ripped something out of me and I hadn't noticed until it was too late. Eventually, I pushed my chair back. The sound scraped against the hardwood like a scream. I walked straight into the kitchen, not because I had a plan, but because I needed to breathe. I leaned against the counter and gripped the edge like it was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. My chest was tight. My hands were shaking. What hurt the most wasn't even what she said, it was that she meant it. There wasn't a flicker of guilt in her voice, no stumble, no hesitation. Just cold, calculated judgment. Like I had failed her by existing in a way she didn't approve of. And she did it in front of everyone. I wasn't alone for long. Dad came in a few seconds later, his face still flushed from anger. He didn't say anything right away. Just walked up beside me and stood there, like he wanted to let the silence settle before the words broke it. "I'm sorry," he said finally. I looked at him. "Why are you apologizing? You were the only one who said anything." He shrugged, looking older than I remembered. "Because I should have said something years ago." And just like that, I cracked. I let out this laugh that was half sob, half scream. "Yeah? Well, welcome to the party, Dad. She's been like this since I grew boobs." He flinched at that, but didn't deny it. Didn't argue. He just looked away like the truth was too bright to face head-on. "I thought it was just a phase," he said quietly. "I thought if I stayed out of it, it would pass. But it didn't. And now you're broken." That word hit me hard. "Do I look broken to you?" He looked at me then, really looked. At the makeup I hadn't wiped off yet. At the tattoos on my arm she always pretended not to see. At the girl I became, the woman actually that Mum never approved of. "No," he said softly. "You look like someone who's had to fight just to be herself." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't crying because I was weak. I was crying because I'd been strong for way too long. "I post bikini pictures on Instagram, Dad. I'm not robbing banks." He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know. Your mum's got this outdated idea of what respectable looks like. I think it scares her." I raised an eyebrow. "Scares her? I'm not Voldemort. I just wore a crop top to a beach party." "She doesn't understand your confidence," he said. "And deep down I think she resents it." That silenced me. Resents it? It made too much sense. Mum spent her life shrinking herself into roles. Wife. Mother. Hostess. She never let herself be anything wild or loud or seen unless it was perfectly acceptable. She wore beige. She ironed napkins. She flinched at the word sex like it was a bomb about to go off. And here I was. Loud. Unapologetic. Free. Of course she hated that. Of course she wanted to control it. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered. "Coming home and pretending we're okay. Letting her pick me apart piece by piece like I'm some disappointing science project." Dad's jaw tensed again, but he nodded. "Then don't. You don't owe her softness when all she gives you is blades." That line? I'll never forget it. You don't owe her softness when all she gives you is blades. That was the moment I started letting go of the guilt. The guilt of not being the daughter she wanted. The guilt of living on my own terms. The guilt of choosing peace over proximity. I wiped my face and stood taller. Thanks for standing up for me, I said. I wasn't expecting it. He smiled sadly. Neither was I. Just then we heard footsteps, sharp ones. Heels against tile. Mum was coming. And I knew this was going to be the real showdown. She walked in like a storm in heels, cold, quiet, but absolutely brewing. Her lipstick was still perfect. Her posture still tight, chin high, eyes sharp. It was that look she always gave me when she was about to correct me. Like she was stepping into a boardroom, not a kitchen where she'd just publicly humiliated her daughter. You done? She asked. I blinked. Excuse me. Crying. Whining. Whatever this little dramatic episode is. My dad stiffened beside me, but I held up a hand. No, let me handle this. Because I'd had it. I was done playing the silent daughter. The good girl. The one who just swallows pain and smiles through it for the sake of peace. You really don't get it, do you? I said. You really think what you did back there was okay? She rolled her eyes. I called out behavior I find embarrassing. That's what mothers do. Maybe if you weren't flashing your chest all over the internet. Stop, I cut her off. You don't get to say another word about what I do with my body when you have lived a whole double life. Her face faltered. Just for a split second. A crack in the glass. What are you talking about? She said flatly. I looked at my dad. He wasn't surprised. Not anymore. Just tired. Dad forgave you, I said, looking her right in the eye. I stayed silent. I let you carry on playing this perfect wife, perfect mother thing when I knew the truth. Now she was pale. Don't, she said. This isn't the place. Oh, so now you care about settings? Because earlier you were just fine screaming whore over dessert. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't stop. Let me remind you, since your memory seems to be selective, you cheated on Dad. Multiple times. Her jaw tightened. You left for 3 months when I was 12. Said it was to clear your head. But I saw the texts, Mum. I saw the photos. You didn't go find peace, you went and played house with some man who wasn't your husband. She took a step back. That was years ago. And what? That means it never happened. I snapped. What about the baby? She went quiet. My dad put a hand on the counter like he needed to steady himself. I heard you crying in the bathroom after the miscarriage, I said. You were talking on the phone. Telling someone he should have been the father. I wasn't supposed to hear it, I know that. But I did. And I carried it for years. Mum turned away like facing the wall could hide her shame. I never told Dad, I said. Because I thought maybe you had changed. And honestly, I didn't want to break him. He loved you so much even when you didn't deserve it. She didn't say a word. He forgave you, I added. Said you turned a new leaf. That people make mistakes. That love isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. I looked back at him. His eyes were glassy now. He didn't deny any of it. Because he knew. And suddenly, I didn't even feel anger anymore. I felt disbelief. How do you, with that history, sit in front of your daughter, in front of your family, and throw a word like whore around like it's candy at a parade? I was angry, she said, voice barely above a whisper. No. You were comfortable, I snapped. Comfortable tearing me down. Comfortable forgetting your own sins. Comfortable forgetting that I'm nothing like what you were back then, and still I get the judgment. My dad cleared his throat. She's right. Mum flinched like those 3 words hit harder than all mine combined. She's not perfect, he continued, looking at me gently. But she's never once disrespected herself the way you just did. Not to herself. Not to anyone. And that was the moment the air shifted. Mum suddenly looked like the smallest person in the room. She wasn't the powerful, sharp-tongued matriarch anymore. She was just a woman exposed by her own daughter, and held accountable by the husband she didn't think would still defend the child they raised. I stepped back and grabbed my purse. I'd had enough of this gathering. Before I left, I said one last thing: you're allowed to hate who you used to be, but don't take it out on me for choosing to love who I've become. And with that, I walked out. The silence afterward was louder than the insult itself. No follow-up texts. No calls. Not even a vague, passive-aggressive meme in the family group chat like she usually posted when she wanted to guilt me into folding first. Just nothing. It was weird at first. You spend your whole life walking on eggshells, and when the cracking finally stops, you don't know how to move. Like you've been dancing on a landmine and now someone just told you the war is over, but your legs are still shaking, waiting for the next blast. I kept waiting for her to show up, to corner me at work or text me something condescending wrapped in scripture. But she didn't. Maybe she knew this time I wasn't bluffing. And Dad? He called the next day. Didn't even say hello. Just, you okay? That's all it took. That one question. I sat on my couch holding the phone, blinking back this dumb mix of relief and heartbreak. Because no, I wasn't okay. And also, yes. For once, I actually was. I feel weird, I said honestly. Like I burned the house down and now I'm cold, but I'm also not sorry. He chuckled, but it wasn't mocking. It was sad. Warm. You didn't burn it down, he said. You just opened the windows and let the smoke out. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. We talked for 2 hours. About nothing. About everything. He told me how he always knew I had the fire in me. How he watched me shrink over the years to fit inside the tight little box Mum built for me. And how proud he was that I finally broke out of it. I should have protected you more, he admitted. No, I said, wiping my face. You showed up when it mattered. And I meant that. It's crazy how much one moment of truth-telling can shift everything. He saw me now not just as his little girl but as a woman. A real person with boundaries, with a voice. Something Mum had spent years trying to silence. After that call, I slept better than I had in months. It's not that everything magically healed overnight. It didn't. My phone still buzzed sometimes with nosy texts from aunts and cousins who heard about the scene. I ignored them. If you didn't defend me then, don't try to unpack it now. I kept my circle small. Tighter. Quieter. I journaled. I took walks. I left my phone on Do Not Disturb a lot. And I started something I never thought I'd have to do. I mourned the mother I wanted, not the one I had. That was the hardest part, honestly. Because for a long time I convinced myself that if I was just good enough, if I just achieved more, obeyed more, dressed better, talked softer, then maybe one day she'd finally see me. Like really see me. Not just as an extension of her. Not as a reflection. But as me. It hit me on a Tuesday randomly while folding laundry that she probably never would. She only ever loved the version of me she could control. Not the version that questioned her. Not the version with a career, opinions, and a life that didn't revolve around pleasing her. And that's when I made peace with it. People romanticize forgiveness like it's always a warm reunion. Sometimes it's just letting go of the expectation that someone will change. And sometimes you forgive for you, not for them. So yeah, I forgave her. Quietly. Alone. In my own way. Not because she apologized, she hadn't. But because I didn't want her shadow darkening the light I was finally building around myself. And in a wild twist I didn't expect, my dad started showing up more. Not just physically, but emotionally. We got dinner once a week. Just us. No filters, no fakeness. One night, over wings and beer, he looked at me and said, "You remind me of the kind of woman your mum used to want to be." I didn't know whether to cry or thank him. So I just said, "That's the saddest compliment I've ever loved." We laughed. Hard. And for the first time I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him. Not even really at her. I was just free. I should have known the story wasn't over just because it got quiet. It's funny how people always assume the younger generation causes all the drama when really we're just reacting to years of stuff that never got dealt with. Years of buried shame, carefully painted smiles, and family gatherings built on eggshells. So when Grandma showed up, Dad's mum, I wasn't even surprised. She called him first. Said she was making tea and couldn't stop thinking about the way Mum stormed off during the birthday. Said something about energy in the air and how it didn't feel like just a mother-daughter spat. She called her a what? She asked over the phone, her voice barely above a whisper, like even the walls shouldn't hear something that heavy. Dad sighed. A whore, Ma. A pause. The kind that says everything and nothing at once. And then, okay. I'm coming over. Dad told me about it the next day while we were sitting in the garden. He looked tired. Not like he hadn't slept, but like he was finally carrying his own emotions and not just everyone else's. She asked me what was really going on, he said. Like what kind of marriage I've actually been in all these years. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Ma always thought your mum was cold, he admitted. But she thought it was just pride. You know, some women don't hug much or talk sweet. Ma figured she was just raised that way. I laughed under my breath. She had no idea who? Nope, he said. None. Not about the cheating. Not the emotional swings. Not the way she twisted everything behind closed doors but looked like a saint in church. That part hit me hard. Because that was her superpower. She could have you in tears Saturday night, then be shaking hands and quoting scriptures on Sunday like she was Mother Teresa. And people bought it. They always did. Until now. Grandma came over with old-school authority. The kind of presence that could make grown men sit up straight and put their phones away. But she didn't come with judgment. She came with concern. Not for herself, but for her son. That broke me a little. All those years I thought no one saw him. Not really. But his mother did. Eventually. She asked me if I loved your mum, Dad said quietly. I told her yes. But I also told her I was tired. That loving someone shouldn't feel like surviving a war. He looked at me like he needed permission to be that honest out loud. I nodded. It's okay, Dad. So yeah, he told her everything. From the early years of manipulation to the time Mum disappeared for 3 days and came back pregnant, only to lose the baby weeks later in a miscarriage that turned the whole house into a grief zone nobody talked about. She told me it was a mistake, Dad said. And I forgave her. Because I thought people could change. I believe that if you give someone enough love, they'll rise into it. Another pause. But some people drown in love, don't they, he said. They take it like it's weakness. That one hit different. Because it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me too. I realized in that moment that my dad and we were the same. We'd both tried to love her enough to heal her. And we both ended up bleeding in the process. Grandma, though? She wasn't having it. After hearing everything, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw her hands in the air or curse the sky. She just nodded, stood up, dusted her skirt, and said, I'm going to talk to her. And she did. God, did she. She showed up at Mum's house the next morning in her good shoes and that long gray sweater she always wore when she meant business. She knocked twice. Mum opened the door. You knew I'd come, Grandma said, stepping in before she could even invite her. Mum tried to smile, tried to keep the act going, but Grandma wasn't here for the script. I want to know the truth, she said. Everything my son told me. Is it true? And that's when it happened. Not yelling. Not tears. Just a slap. Out of nowhere, Mum slapped her. Her own mother-in-law. Across the face. I don't owe you explanations, Mum hissed, voice low and sharp. He should have kept his mouth shut. Tell him to stop whining like a little boy. Then she slammed the door in her face. Just like that. No remorse. No shame. Just ego. Pure and raw. Grandma told me all this later over the phone. She didn't even sound angry. Just heartbroken. I thought she loved him, she said. I thought she loved you. But she loves control more than anything. I didn't have to say a word. We both knew what came next. There's a moment in every person's life when something clicks, and not in a warm, fuzzy way. I'm talking about the snap. The sound your soul makes when it's tired of bending. That was the day for my dad. When Grandma came back from Mum's house with a red cheek and eyes that looked 20 years older, I think something in him broke for good. He sat there silently while she told him everything, how she asked a simple question and got violence in return. No apologies. No explanations. Just venom. And he just nodded. Once. Slow. Then he said the quietest sentence I'd ever heard from him. I'm done. 3 words, but they landed like thunder. Grandma reached for his hand. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" but "What about the kids?" She just held it. Because for the first time she saw her son clearly, not as a provider, not as a loyal husband, not as the man who always made excuses for his wife, but as someone who'd been emotionally drained for years and finally decided to stop bleeding for someone who never bandaged his wounds. He didn't announce it to anyone else that day. He just started moving differently. He cancelled their next dinner reservation without saying a word. He stopped texting her back with "yes, okay" to keep the peace. And when she showed up unannounced a few days later, acting like everything was fine, he didn't even open the door. Just stood behind the curtain, looked at her through the window, and turned away. She screamed. "Are you serious right now? I'm your wife." But he didn't move. "You're embarrassing yourself," she spat. Still, he stood there like stone. "You'll come crawling back. You always do." That one made me flinch. Because it used to be true. But not anymore. Something had shifted. And it wasn't out of anger, it was peace. The kind of peace that comes when you realize you've been lied to for so long that silence feels more honest than conversation. Later that week, he sat me down. "I stayed too long," he admitted. "I kept thinking love was supposed to hurt sometimes. That it was noble to carry the weight when someone else couldn't. But I didn't realize I was letting it crush me." I nodded, tears in my throat. "She kept me small," he said. "And I let her." Those were the hardest words, I think. The ones where he took responsibility, not for her behavior, but for allowing himself to shrink inside a marriage that fed off his kindness. He wasn't perfect. None of us are. But he didn't deserve the emotional games, the cheating, the manipulation, and he definitely didn't deserve to watch his daughter be publicly humiliated by the same woman he once fought so hard to defend. I think what shook him the most wasn't just the slap Grandma got. It was the realization that this woman, his wife, had no respect left for anyone. Not even the mother of the man who kept her whole life afloat for 2 decades. "You're brave," I whispered to him one night. "For walking away." He smiled, soft and tired. "No, baby. Staying took bravery. But leaving? Leaving is healing." He filed for separation the following week. No long speech. No petty revenge. Just a quiet signature and a key left on the kitchen counter. She lost it, of course. Threatened to make things ugly. Said she'd tell everyone he was abusive, that he pushed her into infidelity, that she miscarried because of his stress. But here's the thing about liars, they rely on people staying silent. And this time, Dad wasn't. He had receipts. Journals. Medical records. Even witnesses. But more than that, he had me. And Grandma. And even a few close family friends who had seen enough over the years to know who she really was when the curtains closed. Word spread, but not the way she thought it would. She expected sympathy. She got side eyes. She expected to be comforted. She got called out. People started pulling back. Invitations dried up. And suddenly, the woman who used to control every narrative was sitting alone at her sister's house, screaming at group chats no one replied to. Dad didn't celebrate. That's not who he is. He just exhaled. Like someone who'd been holding his breath for 20 years. And for the first time in my life, I saw him smile without apology. Without fear. Without that flicker of pain behind his eyes. It wasn't a happy ending. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And for people like us, that's everything. The day of the divorce was gray. Not the kind of thunderstorm drama gray you see in movies, just quiet. Cloudy. Still. Like the world paused for a second to witness something huge and yet invisible. Dad didn't dress up for court. No suit, no shiny shoes. Just a clean shirt, jeans, and the calmest face I've ever seen. The kind of calm that only comes after you've lived through a war and made peace with walking away. I asked him that morning, "Are you nervous?" He shook his head. "I've already done the hard part," he said. "Today is just paperwork." And honestly, he was right. The real battle was in the years he spent sacrificing his needs for someone else's comfort. The countless nights he convinced himself things would get better. The birthdays and anniversaries spent pretending nothing was wrong. The family events where he stood beside a woman who had betrayed him but still wore the perfect wife mask for every camera in the room. The real fight was letting go of all that. This was just the end of the movie credits. We sat outside the courthouse for a bit, waiting for the clerk to call them in. She was already inside, apparently. I'd overheard someone say she brought a lawyer who looked more like a fashion accessory than actual counsel. Figures. When she finally walked out of that courtroom, I swear she looked shocked. Like she genuinely didn't expect him to go through with it. She looked at him the way someone looks at a broken vending machine, offended that it no longer worked in their favor. He didn't even flinch. And then it was over. Just like that. Stamps. Signatures. Done. Divorced. I always thought divorce would be this loud, ugly explosion. But it wasn't. Not this one, at least. It was a release. A slow exhale of a man who had held too much inside for too long. We got lunch afterward. Nothing fancy, just burgers and iced tea at this quiet spot he liked. "Do you feel lighter?" I asked. He looked out the window and smiled. "I feel like me again." That hit harder than I expected. Because I realized I'd never really seen him before, not fully. I'd seen the version of him that was constantly managing someone else's moods, walking on eggshells, keeping the peace. But this guy? This peaceful, open, laughing version of my dad? He was new. And I liked him. A lot. Grandma joined us halfway through the meal. She hugged him so tight I thought she might snap his spine. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. He nodded, eyes a little glassy. And for a split second we all sat there in this weird, beautiful silence, 3 generations connected by pain, resilience, and finally healing. Later that week, Mum tried calling me. 6 times. No voicemail. Just missed calls and a couple of dry call me texts. I didn't reply. Because here's the thing, I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. She crossed a line that day at the family gathering and maybe she thought I'd forget, but I didn't. And I wasn't about to keep playing the forgive and ignore game that had already broken my dad. A few relatives tried to guilt trip us. "But she's still your mother," they said. Sure. She is. But being someone's mother doesn't give you the right to disrespect them, or to humiliate your own daughter in front of your entire bloodline and expect 0 consequences. I don't hate her. I just refuse to protect her from the fallout of her own actions. That's not revenge. That's boundaries. Months passed and the dust started to settle. My dad moved into a smaller place, nothing flashy, but it had light. Real light. Windows that stayed open. Plants that thrived. Furniture he picked out, not her. And you could feel the difference. You could feel the peace in the air, the laughter in his chest, the way he walked a little taller. He started going on walks with Grandma. Signed up for a cooking class, if you can believe that. Started smiling in photos without faking it. As for me, I started therapy. Because somewhere in all of this, I realized how deeply I'd absorbed my mother's projections. Her need for control, her bitterness, her shame masked as pride. I carried bits of that. I saw myself through her eyes for too long. And now? I'm unlearning. I'm choosing myself even when it's hard. That's what this whole thing taught me. Love isn't about staying through the worst, it's about not being the worst to the people who love you. And family? Family doesn't have to mean forever if forever costs your peace. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave the table when love starts tasting like pain. So yeah, the divorce is finalized. But more than that, so is the cycle. And that is what truly set us free. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to my story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. And share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Until next time, take care of your heart and protect your peace. I'll see you in the next one.